I think because of my schedule and travel in from Mumbai to Goa, Goa to here, I've got a masterclass in the graveyard shift, because this is a time when everybody's lunch has been digested, people have other things to do and they run away, or they're wondering when there will be a proper tea break. But nevertheless, let me just take you through a few things that I had put together. This was actually more an attempt individually on my part to just understand and navigate the landscape, as in where are we with reference to what's happening in the world of artificial intelligence. And I will walk you through a few slides to begin with on how we are already living in the world of AI. Most people have become conversant with the world of artificial intelligence after November of 2022, when they have come to face with ChatGPT, for example. And because human beings give great importance to conversation ability, they feel anything that exhibits signs of language is something superior. Therefore, it has acquired great engagement values. It's like a toy. Everybody has discovered it for the first time. And recently now, another large language model has become universally available via WhatsApp. So people are seeing this on their WhatsApp. They go to Meta, they ask a question, they ask it to imagine something, and it's popping up. So they're really intrigued. But what we will discover in the first half of the presentation is that we are already living in a world which is deeply filtered algorithmically, and that is all narrow to broad to large scale artificial intelligence. GPT, the word itself, means general purpose technology. It is as widespread as the arrival of the steam engine or electricity or the internet. So it is fundamentally transforming the meaning each part has to the sum of parts, and I'll cover that. But before I get to it, we know that let me go back to the previous slide. This is the cheetah. It is the fastest land animal. Everybody knows that. But we don't know that the longest running animal on the planet, the one that can run at whatever pace, the longest distance, is the human being. So our survival as a species has happened because we are able to run for continuously long periods of time. And before mankind developed the ability to have any kind of implements, any kind of tools to hunt, they used to do what is called persistence hunting. They used to run behind a small mammal continuously without getting tired. And because the mammal, most of them are unable to sweat, they don't have sweat glands, they would simply collapse after a while because of exhaustion, and the human being was able to capture that animal. This is how our species evolved. But we are not able to chase change. Change or the computation of outcomes is something that the human species still does not understand. This is another example of a naturally evolving ecosystem. This is the bamboo plant. It is actually a grass, and this is the most common form of deciduous trees that you find on the planet. A tree is a single trunk system. Once it lives its useful life, it becomes useless, but it has the maximum amount of timber or wood available at that point in time. What happens to it? Once it dies, it is cut down. But bamboo has an extensive or a co-located root system. It is impossible to cut it down. It replenishes within days. You cut a bamboo. I have a farm, we have bamboo on the edges of the river. You cut it down and it replenishes within a matter of 2 to 3 days. It starts to grow back again. It is auto-replenishing because of a distributed root system. The reason I have these examples is, one, artificial general intelligence is present in everything that you do right now, today. And this is the best version of artificial intelligence that has ever existed. For those of you who don't know, ChatGPT OpenAI got 100 million users within 60 days. And this is the fastest aggregation of consumer interest ever in the field of technology. Much before this, the internet began in the 1960s with ARPANET, then we came to the desktop era, and then the smartphones happened. So it has taken almost 50 to 60 years. The internal combustion engine has lived for more than 150 years. The printing press arrived in the 15th century. So it has been around for 600 years. Artificial general intelligence has arrived in the space of less than 2 to 3 years, and it is already the best model that ever existed. So even if it stops today, it will have achieved more than any other technology in the past. Now, we don't understand what is artificial technology because we see it as a distinct other entity. So I will clarify to you as we go along. Your option is to adapt or die. Today, if in your house, if you leave the refrigerator door open, it starts to beep. Your email arrives to you, it gets automatically sorted in folders. You are typing something on MS Word, and it prompts the next word. All of these are narrow sense artificial intelligence. A lot of what you do, even when you're checking your Spotify day list, the way in which it is being fed to you has read you. So the more you consume it, the more it consumes you. And these are all various aspects of artificial intelligence which are already present in your life. So it is not new, it has been around for a long time. The one common denominator, everything in our life that is changing today is because of the universal presence of the cellular phone. When is the last time any of you went and spent 2 hours at a bank branch? When is the last time that you read 2 books end to end? Less than a week. When is the last time you watched 2 hours of television? Uninterrupted 2 hours of television. Not OTT, linear TV. How many times have you been on WhatsApp since the morning? So the pace of algorithmic interactions, the pace of what is happening on this screen is what is defining your life. Now, I have a smartphone. Between 2014 and 2024, the world's population of cellular phones went from 1 billion to 4 billion. So 300 crore phones got added. And even the poorest phone on the planet today has more computing power than NASA had in 1969 when they sent a man to the moon. That is in fact, ordinary electric iron or a washing machine has more computing power than NASA had at that point in time. So the quantum leap that this phone has taken from what was in your life even 5 years ago is unimaginable. We talk about 1 GB of data as nothing at all, whereas 1 MB of data has enough capacity to have 774 A4 size paper text in it. I mean, I'm an old man now almost in comparison to many young kids who are sitting here. When we used to have the 1.44-inch floppy disk, it had virtually no memory at all. People used to carry them in shoe boxes. You needed that many to even have a sensible data transfer. But that era has gone, and this transition is what is enabling artificial intelligence. Now, because it is a fashionable word, most people say AI all the time. But if you ask most people candidly, they think of artificial intelligence as a software. Actually, artificial intelligence is not a software. Artificial intelligence is a distributed, diffused neural network, and it is critical to understand the difference. Software is predictable, coded, and will do the same thing time and again, time and again, time and again. So when you add 2 plus 2 on a calculator, at the machine level, there is a program that gives you the answer 4. Even if you do it 1 billion times, it will give you the same answer. That is software. That is code. But artificial intelligence, if you open any of the large language model interfaces and ask it a question twice over in a minute, it will give you different answers because it is learning and iterating as you go along. So it is not, in fact, uh, a predictable, stable, assured outcome. And that is the fragility of AI at this moment in time, but that is also the power of AI. Why is it the fragility? Because AI even today tends to hallucinate. So when I search, let's say on large language models for who is Shubhranshu Singh, there is my namesake who is a professor of semiconductor in some Indiana university, so it melds the two. So it gives me a PhD in semiconductor physics, which I don't have. But software will not make that mistake. The other thing is, it learns by itself. A software once coded remains as is. But a dynamic model which is artificially intelligent will learn as it goes along. So, code can learn, program can learn to play chess, but artificial intelligence learned to play a Chinese board game called Wei Qi or Go, which is a very fluid board game. It could not have been programmed. But today, if you taught a neural network chess, it will learn 2,500 years of chess in about less than 2 hours. All the possible potential permutations that man has done, and then it will play moves which have not been played ever in, say, 5,000 years of chess history, because it is not learning via protocol. It is learning via a neurally diffused, it is not following a set pattern. It is teaching itself. And this is the power of artificial intelligence, which if you have not spent 72 hours on, let's say, ChatGPT or on Meta, you will not understand what it does. It's like dealing with an alien form of intelligence, which is actually, while it is not alive or sentient, it is intelligent because it is teaching itself, and that it is dynamically inherently unstable is its power, because everything else that man made is finite and within boundary lines, but this is unstable. This I have covered. It has grown at a pace where if everything stopped now, it is not stopping. Last year, $50 billion worth of investment, only last year, has gone into private funding for AI startups in the United States alone. If you add what Amazon, Microsoft, Meta and Google are putting as data capacity on AI, it is expected to be $2 trillion by the end of this fiscal. That kind of money is not being put for social experimentation. That kind of money is being put in because they will derive a return on it. And that return will come from cloud capital that all of us are party to. So every time that you're going to a smarter program, which is AI enabled, you are paying 1/1000th of a cent to somebody who has developed that, but multiply that by $2 trillion of transaction that happens, and you begin to get the sense of that scale. This is a well-known thing in terms of the hype cycle. So after the peak of expectancy comes the trough of disillusionment. We are at that stage right now, probably, or the beginning of that stage. Why? Because everybody says AI, AI, but the licensed use cases are very few. People are not trained to interact with AI in their routine jobs. They are not picking up that value. They are not being able to show a return. So people say, okay, been there, done that, let's move on. And many people think AI is a smart chatbot, which is practically the least that you can do with it. After this phase goes away is really where the power of return starts to come in. Let me give you an example. When you lift a landline today, nowadays nobody does, because on this phone you see the bars, so you know your network is alive. But on a landline, when you pick it up, there is a dial tone, Until 1945, in the world, there was no dial tone. When you picked up a phone, an operator spoke up at the other end, and then you said, connect me to 452 or whatever. After the war in America, the operators went on a strike because there was a shortage of the workforce. And then AT&T said, look, we must do something because it's too expensive to put a human interface. So they said, "Arey, isme karna kya hai? Isme yahi to batana hai that the phone is alive. Let's just put a dial tone." And everybody quickly adopted that. Now when you lift a phone, you know it's working. It is that kind of dial tonization that is going to happen in the world of AI very soon. And that is when its real power will come out. Because right now it's a toy. Everybody is engaging with it and getting wowed by it. But once it sinks into the background, That is the time its real power will be felt. And for many of us who are thinking we will be ahead of the game, by then it will be too late. So why is there hope and why is there hype? There is hope because investments have gone in. $1 billion is $100 crore. That means close to 9,000 crore rupees. $2 trillion, I can't even do the math without a calculator right now. So that kind of investment has gone in. Applications are being built, and those applications don't need human beings. As in, you don't need to interface with the application for it to be alive. Just like you don't need to go to your bank app to calculate the interest. It is doing it by itself. It is open source as well in large parts. Even Meta's Llama is open. I mean, it's open source. There are hundreds of startup shops that are working on the code which has been made available to them. And like I said, this is already the best AI you will ever see. So it will only get better and better. And why is there hype? Because, and this also I've covered, there is not enough commercial use casing. We don't know. If I tell you, okay, Shruti here, make use of AI in your day-to-day job, what can business world do with AI? There is no immediacy of use cases. People will probably think of customer interface. People will think of some places where they have productive gaps or manpower shortages. But people are not imagining end-to-end business process with the use of AI. Once that starts to happen, we will see much greater return. There is also structural monopolism. What does that mean? Meta bought WhatsApp. Meta also bought Instagram. Both of them were not developed by them. If they didn't buy them, they would have done something on a scale that would have buried them. So in the tech cradle of the world, anything that begins to become successful is bought at 100 times valuation, which makes it attractive for them to sell out to the largest platforms. And this structural monopolism means that new things are not going to come out of the blind spot. It will be largely the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Meta ecosystems of the world that will be able to absorb the new technologies and work very fast and quickly ahead. And these are all aspects that we should think about. Why? Because, all of you, all of us, me included, we are, in a sense, happy prisoners of an algorithm. Everything you do in the day-to-day is governed by algorithms. And unlike science fiction movies where we show them sitting in one room in blue light with lots of computers, there is no one place in the world that is governing your life. It is a very vastly diffused ecosystem, and in every interaction. So, if you swipe a card today at a department store, that unit of data that you have, let's say, bought face wash, that data goes and sleeps with the inventory software of the face wash manufacturer. The face wash manufacturer's data, that one unit from the department store has moved out, goes and sleeps with the plastic manufacturer. The plastic manufacturer's data that I need to procure more plastic to make the next bottle goes and sleeps with the resin manufacturer, maybe in China. And at the click of that one button or the swipe of one card, data is going around the world. And this was not the case earlier. Earlier, if you went to, say, Rhythm House in Bombay to buy a LP record, he didn't know what the other shops had sold. He only knew what his inventory was. But today, when you listen to music on Spotify, what you listen to is heard by them more than heard by you. If you linger, forget going to something, your scrolling speed is also monitored. What you pause on is also monitored. This is the power of the algorithmic world. You do not want to escape it, because if you escape it, you fall behind. Everything that happens to you from the moment you wake up, most of us will reach out for our phones the moment we wake up. There are 60 plus signals on the phone. They know you are awake. They know you have moved. Your phone today knows more about you than the rest of the planet put together. In the Google ecosystem, in the Meta ecosystem, in the financial tech ecosystem, they know more about you today than you know sitting here. For example, you can't tell me exactly what latitude, longitude you are sitting on, but your phone knows exact specification. You can't tell me since the morning what has happened to every single stock that you may own, but somebody like a Zerodha will know that data is captive to them. You don't know what happened to the mail that you sent to the insurance agency, but Google knows that you have received a response. In fact, it will prompt you, this was received 4 days ago, you have not responded yet. So, everything in your ecosystem has a digital signal. For example, if I and you search for the same thing, exact same thing, Rahul Dravid's record or whatever, it will throw up different results for you than it will throw up for me, because it's reading 60 plus signals. So the make of my phone, that I was in Goa yesterday, that I searched for Kapil Dev day before yesterday, as against you who may have searched for a political person. They know your trend line, so they're giving you different results. And that result will mold what you do next. Because you cannot, because they will show you what you have been looking for. And so this is something that is algorithmically done already. Forget the externalization of AI. Now, experiences are crafted by algorithms. What does that mean? That means that if I'm interested in going on a holiday and I check for Puducherry, for several days thereafter, I will be inundated with information about Pondicherry. I may have moved on, but it has read what people like me are asking for. And the whole economy is running on search indexing. What does that mean? When you search for where can I have coffee, if you search right now, coffee near me, it may not tell you the coffee shop in Imperial, because Imperial may not have paid Google to put that real estate top. It will show you a Starbucks or something else 6 kilometers away. So what you are seeing, the way information is retrieved and presented for you, is commercially intermediated. And how much does Google make in a year with this programmatic advertising? $250 billion. Last year, for the first time, the world had $1 trillion of advertising revenue. Last year, 2023, the world crossed $1 trillion of advertising revenue. $700 billion out of that was digital. If you keep aside Twitter, Snapchat, a few others which are $2-4 billion each, then the big one is ByteDance or TikTok, which declares about 14 to 15 in the Western world $billion and about 100 in China. If you keep that aside, you're still left with 550 to 600 billion dollars that is divided between the Meta ecosystem and the Google ecosystem. $250 billion for those blue links that you get on your Google search. That is gargantuan amounts of money that are going from every corner of the world, and in lieu of that, you are getting information. Now, let me come to this. There was a time when humans made that decision. If I knew Anurag Batra and he introduced me to his editor, then if I wrote an article, the editor would consider me and say, हाँ तो लिखता तो ठीक है, इसका article छाप दो. Or a fashion photographer may write to a fashion magazine and the photo editor would choose. There were gatekeepers, there were tastemakers. If you were a fashion designer and you went to a fashion week, there was a fashion coordinator who may choose you. That world is gone. Now it is mathematically derived. Now what is the problem? You will say that's very good. The problem is that it is multiplying that by the billions of others like you. So the whole ecosystem is descending to a lower level of collectivism. What does that mean? Suppose you are a great poet and you want to be on Instagram. You have to subscribe to the format of Instagram Reels. So there is no question of you writing, 60 pages and making a long video. Then you go to Google. So everything is now reduced to the outline or the stencil or the preference of the platform. And the incentives of the platform will come to you only if you subscribe to the platform. Now, your clicking self is not you. There is more to you than just what is clicking something. Vincent van Gogh, who is now recognized to be one of the most powerful painters in the West, sold only one painting in his entire lifetime. The Mona Lisa, which is, if you go to the Louvre in France, there is a stampede running in the direction of the Mona Lisa. It was unknown till it was stolen in 1911 or 1915. And then there was a big scandal that it has been stolen. And then it became popular. So what is popular is not necessarily important, and what is important may not be necessarily popular. So a great thinker, let's say a philosopher today, will be an utter failure on the Instagram world because he will not be liked, so he will never surface up. So what is profound has to subscribe to the template of the platform, and there is not one, there are multiple screening interfaces that filter that information to you. So what you think is reality is commercially filtered. That is the problem. Now, familiarity is more important than novelty, and distribution is more important than content. So you may be the best content person in the planet, but if you are not able to reach enough number of people, they will never see you. In the internet era is the first time that people have become famous for being famous. When I was growing up, I was born in 74, in the 80s, if somebody was famous, he had credible achievement. There was Sunil Gavaskar, he had made X number of centuries. You know, there was a Lata Mangeshkar, she was famous. There was a Dharmendra, he was a great cine star. But today, there are people in fields of life who are famous simply because they are algorithmically famous. So, when Kim Kardashian came recently to India, everybody knew her already. But out of the few people who are here, I can bet you not one person can tell me 5 Nobel laureates from the last 5 years. Any. We don't know. Everybody got 2 vaccines for COVID, but we don't know the 4 or 5 scientists who collaborated to make the COVID vaccine, because the algorithm is not promoting that to you. But you will know exactly who won the T20 World Cup, and because algorithmically they are being promoted. So your concept of reality, what you consider to be real, is constructed reality. And there is a lot of social criticism of that, particularly in America, which says that every human being should have the right to be forgotten. Today, this is sticky material. You don't have a right to be forgotten. Once you have gone through and touched something and said, I agree, then you will live in their memory forever. So you don't have a right to be forgotten. And that is invasive because there are so many interfaces. And Indians anyways have a low threshold of tolerance for privacy. कुछ भी मुफ्त में मिल रहा है, I agree, doesn't matter, but they're reading you all the time. You are surrendering that privileged information to the platform. And there is a lot of writing, which those of you who are interested in go through. The incidence of this is not a generational problem. As in, my son, who's 16, may not like to read much from a book. He likes to listen to videos or podcasts. That is a generational thing, because by the time they got to grade school, everybody had an iPad or a laptop, so that is their preferred medium. But this is not a generational issue. This is a structural issue. You are paying for your interest. The cloud is earning money. While I have been talking to you for free, I must emphasize, this is making money based on my information. It now knows exactly that Shubhranshu has been for the last 2 hours in central Delhi. It knows that I have not consumed WhatsApp. It knows that I have not gone to Spotify. It is feeding that information. It is then programmatically telling an advertiser, Colgate Palmolive, Shubhranshu Singh is not right now on somewherecheaper.com. So the cloud is earning from you even when you are not exerting, when you are not interacting with it. There is no other capital model in the world that earns money. If you buy a newspaper, you read it, you fold it and keep it, the advertisement doesn't leap out at you. The newspaper does not remember the next day what you were reading the previous day. Suppose there is some news, suppose about elections, and you following Odisha elections. The newspaper tomorrow will not know that you were reading that article today. This will know. It will only give you more information. My father, who is not very conversant with adaptive systems, tells me, यार एक बात है, तुम जिस नौकरी में जाते हो उसी की खबर गूगल पे ज़्यादा आने लग जाती है, because he has not realized that by searching for it, it is feeding him more information about the company that I happen to be. And of course, I have not told him. I let him be under the impression that I am making such a difference that more news is happening because of the company. So adaptive systems pull you in, and then you are not forgotten. And then there is algorithmic anxiety. What does algorithmic anxiety means? People, I was reading an article which said that on average, a person takes 5 to 11 minutes on a diffuse before they realize their wallet is lost. But it takes less than 30 seconds for people to realize that their cell phone is not with them. Because we are constantly in engagement with our cell phones. This is your primary identity. Your physical identity is less important than your cell phone identity today. That is already a reality. So, nothing that happens on Insta or on LinkedIn or any one thing is not so profound that you are satisfied for the day. Earlier, if you read an article, a book, or listened to some music for half an hour, you were satisfied for the day. But if that model exists on this, then you will not be doing this throughout the day. So your engagement will tank, and with that the rating will tank, and with that the advertising revenue will tank. So it is enough to give you just enough, but not long enough, not continuously enough. So you have to be on it all the time. This is called the dopamine fix, just a little bit at one time. And in 1979, a famous musician called Brian Eno released an album called Music for Airports. Airport. That's the kind of music that plays in elevators or in a spa. You can meditate on that music, but if you choose to work on that, that's fine. It won't disturb you. You can talk above it. It's great music, but it's not important enough. The social feed is a bit like that. It is important enough for you to keep going back to it, but it is not so profound that you will stop going back to it. That is the whole model. So you're constantly in that environment. पहले ऐसा नहीं था. If you go 2015 and before, on social media networks, you got a chronological feed. That meant that if I was following Manish or Shruti, their posts would come to me in chronological order. First post I get to see first, next post I get to see next. Then in the name of customer experience, they said, "Arey, itne sare log ho gaye, how is it possible to give chronological feeds? We will choose and feed." And then what you started to get is algorithmically decided for you. Twitter has a special feed called For You. TikTok, it's not here but elsewhere in the world, is 100% algorithmic. They decide what you see. And I will cover some other examples later. One big change that is happening in AI is search. Today, search has become our primary information pool. For those of you who don't know me, and if I make half an impression on you, you will go and search. Google. Google, whatever chooses to tell you about me, becomes your first information about me. That is a search engine. Its model is based on giving you a lot of links which are relevant, and it's done basis an algorithm called page ranking. But today, AI is enabling what is called answer engine, not a search engine. It will have a conversation with you. So what do you want to know about Shubhranshu? Last appearance was at BW Marketing. It will not give you links to go and click and do it on your own. So it is collapsing and making it even easier. Earlier you were going to a field of potatoes, taking out potatoes, cutting them, frying them, and making French fries. Today it's giving you a box of Pringles, ready-made. You don't have to exert. And if you don't want to type, no problem. You can do voice. So the pace at which Gen AI is reshaping search will become very important. For those of you who have... So what's happening? Speed, distribution, relevance, precision, convenience. These are more important than quality, memory, intimacy, fame, or quantity. Most of the, even friends, I have several groups on WhatsApp. One of them is my school friends. Half the time what they send you prompts you for laughter also. In that 10 seconds it will start laughing midway. Because it's not even confident it will make you laugh. So everything is prompted, everything is ready-made, and it is forgettable. If you get excited, you will push it to 2 more people, that's about it. Because ye kal subah phir bhejenge, ye roz bhejenge, ye aata hi rehta hai. So it's not like, see film music. Today, a Cola-Berry D, something happens, it lives for those 3 weeks or a month. It is everywhere, overconsumption, and then it just goes away and you don't even hear it again, ever. So there is a T20fication. There's a tightness, it arrives, it is in your environment everywhere, and then it just goes away, because that's the model, always on. It just keeps going and coming. But the one good thing is, good or bad, is that commercialization has taken off. So if in, Dharmendra as a star, my grandfather saw him, my father saw him, I saw him, and I think 1 or 2 movies my son would have also seen. He's 16. Same for Sachin Tendulkar as a cricketer. Lata Mangeshkar as a playback singer. They were people who were straddling generations. Today they live for 5 years, 6 years, and they go away. But in that 5 or 6 years, they monetize so well that they are much richer than people who may have lived and done well for 30 years professionally. Because the reward structure is also very tall. So the bell curve has been busted. So now let me rush through, because it's telling me I have only half. So I keep writing about a lot of this stuff. I post regularly on LinkedIn. I am also prisoner to some platform or the other. I also have a site called Shubhranshu Singh. In this area, I am particularly actively looking for the last almost 2 years now. I've spoken about answer engine. You should check out Perplexity. For those of you who have not gone on Perplexity AI, it's a very alternate model to Google. It will show you what AI is doing in the world. It is only 35 people. They work out of a shared office facility. Already it's valued at $1 billion. 1 billion market value. So let's not talk too much about this. Now, what happens when search changes? When search changes, your memory indexing also changes. For example, what is important and relevant to you, if I ask any one of you your PAN card number, your PAN number, you will know. Because it is primary identity. You may know what was your roll number in university. You may know your maths teacher's name from class 5. Because these are formative influences. But if I ask you what was the hotel number, room number, that you stayed in 3 days ago, you will forget. It gets wiped out of your memory. So this RAM memory is now getting conditioned on super normal scales in the digital ecosystem. It comes in and it goes out. Nothing is retained. And this is threatening to me as a marketer, because marketing meant billions of people should share the same sentiment. Everybody should feel Coca-Cola is great. Everybody should feel Nike is great. That is how brands are built, not by personalization only 1:1. Because unless there is collective, you can't build value on top of it, right? So the change is that with search being originated through artificial intelligence, you will have a conversation with your refrigerator. On your way back, it will know, because you have started your car, it will ping you on the phone saying eggs are out, I am ordering eggs automatically. So this kind of a thing is making humans potentially be in neutral gear. They are not in a position to take willful action. The sociological term for it is agency, active. You don't have agency over your own decisions. You're just simply conditioned by the platform. And tomorrow you can't tell what is real from what is artificially generated. So these are 4 images. Looking at them, you can't say which one is human and which one is done by an AI engine. And if you guess, you will guess wrong, because what looks like it might have been done by AI would probably be. So in this case, the middle 2 are done by human beings. It is an actual shot. And the ones on either end are generated through AI. But you can't, tomorrow, it has already happened in Hollywood. Hollywood went on strike for almost 3 months, right? For those of you who know. Why? Because I can take a scan of Chetan's voice sample, and a scan, simple body scan, no longer than you pass through security. And then I don't need Chetan. Chetan will appear as a hologram. Chetan will do everything. Chetan will act out a whole script. It is plasticky right now, but that sophistication is not far away. So Hollywood is alarmed, because, once it learns what is your writing style, what is your shooting style, what is your directorial style, what is your personality type, it will be able to put together a motion picture out of thin air without needing the human talent. And that's massive. Now, all of us know social media is growing by leaps and bounds. Human beings are on it for almost 2.5 hours per day. And it is growing at a compounded growth rate of near 30%. What does that mean? You divide by 70 by this number. So every 2 years it's doubling. Now obviously there are only 24 hours in a day, so you can't be on social media for 26 hours, but the platform will engage with you every second of the day. Let me skip through a lot of this. How is AI interacting with social media that you don't know? One is influencers. What does influencer mean? Earlier influencer meant people you didn't know. So the editor of a newspaper was an influencer who was writing an opinion piece. But today, an influencer means anybody who has this. What this phone has is more sophisticated than huge studios 20 years ago, because it has more processing capability, it has television camera capability, it has an inbuilt, and the number of apps that are there to color and to correct and to modify are staggering. So it will change the way in which you interact with things. And more is coming. $50 billion has gone in as venture funding only for AI-enabled platforms. So there are so many new interaction modules that some of them will be ad tech, some of them will be ad tech, martech, some of them will be consumer tech, in your face. Some of them will be behind the scenes, so you don't know, but it's working, and you may still see a white labeled product, or you may see your conventional app, but it is being supported by AI. Blockchain is another thing which is going to be actively engaging in the AI world to verify, because blockchain is a great way to keep unique ledger. But I don't have the time to get into that, but it is very good because it will prevent you from being recreated, but it is very bad because it will thumbprint you. There is a reason why when we sell property, we still put a thumbprint, because nobody else can have the exact same thing. Once you are encoded through blockchain, you are a ledger entry. You are permanently there. So there's good and bad both. Many people are doing a lot of work. Let me jump to the interesting piece here, which I wanted to analyze: Netflix. How many of us have Netflix? Now, Netflix follows an algorithm called pragmatic chaos. That's the name of the large number of Indians were involved. MIT Media Labs was involved. Pragmatic chaos has a structure to the algorithm. It's called singular value decomposition. What does that mean? I want to see romantic movies starring Amitabh Bachchan, directed by Hrishikesh Mukherjee. So it decomposes along single variables. Or I want to see violent action movies with Amitabh. But I want to see violent action movies by Amitabh Bachchan in which he dies and therefore tragedy. Or I want to see violent movies with Amitabh Bachchan in which there is romance. So this is the way in which the tree... At the bottom of that tree, there are 79,000 discrete units. But how many do you see when you go to the Netflix screen? Nothing. When you go to a newspaper and it gives you your star sign, it divides humanity into 12 star signs. But Netflix asks only for 3 genres of movies. Tell me 3 movies, give me a few examples of what you like, that's it. We have understood who you are, now we will start showing you. And your landing page is your destiny. There is no possibility for you to search much. I mean, you can search for Al Pacino, but you can't do this kind of decomposition on search. Why? Because it does not want you to search. It wants you to be captive to the home screen. It's a great business model. People like you also watched. You also watch. So they are able to drive up the value of whatever they want to drive up the value of. That's the model. And everybody is learning through reinforcement. Do another experiment. You go and let your child and you create the same profiles, choose the same genre, do everything identical. But you will not get the same thumbnails. You will start over a period in time being read differently, especially if you're on phones. It will give you different thumbnails, even though you are doing exactly the same things. So this is the power of personalization, which is enabled by algorithmic. Now, last before I leave, there is no theory to AI. Don't read about AI and listen to people like me alone. You go and interact with AI and do it consciously away and on the screen, and then come back to it and spend 8-10 hours on it in a week. Hopefully take 2 days off and write down with pencil everything that's important to you and check what AI interfaces are doing. Let's say a chat GPT. You will begin to then learn more about it, how it will impact your life, your education, everything. Now, the reason we don't do that is because A, it's not our business. I do a job, what will AI do? Secondly, we don't know enough about it, so we feel afraid. It's like, but the world, it will not kill you. It is like being in a boxing ring, right? If you don't know boxing, and if you have not, अगर मैं boxing के ऊपर सिर्फ किताब पढूं या presentation सुनूं, but I don't go and box, and then if I'm put up against an expert boxer, what will happen? He will bash me up. This is the theory and practice of technology. If I only read about it, or listen to somebody like Shubhranshu presenting about it, but I don't go and engage myself, I will forget about it, I will only be captive to it. But if you engage with it, you will make mistakes, you will learn, you will get bashed up, and then one day you will be like Muhammad Ali, you will be on top. So the only way to live with perspective in the world of AI is not to run away from it, it's to actively go and embrace it. The more you work with it, the more you begin to understand it. So that's all I had for you today. Thank you very much. Thank you. If anybody has a question, yes. But I can hear you. You can be loud, maybe.
So you actually spoke about structural monopolism, right? I completely agree with that. I think that's definitely the case for the West. Because right now we have an example of the world's biggest AI hardware company, which is NVIDIA. That has a market cap of $4 trillion US, which is exactly equal to India's GDP, right? So we have the case of a company which is, in fact, aaj raat ko hi unka earnings call release hai. So the company in itself is going to become bigger than our entire country, right? Which firstly tells us that India there's a lot of scope in terms of using AI, which is definitely not the case right now. And secondly, I feel in India, in the East, there's going to be a case of structural collectivism.
Yes.
In the sense that innovation is going to come from startups and MSMEs, particularly because we're a risk-averse society. And dusra, if you look at blue-chip companies like Tata Motors, for instance, companies, size in itself becomes a constraint for them, right? So firstly, do you agree with this thesis of structural collectivism panning out in India? And secondly, for startup owners just like myself, what's the one niche or the one tailwind that you see progressing in the sense that how can startup owners partner with blue-chip or large-cap businesses?
Yeah, great question, by the way. So I think NVIDIA is not really a structural monopolist. I would make that exception. See, his question is, the big get bigger because the small cannot challenge them. This is basically structural monopolism. Now, in the world of the cloud, there is something called cloud capital, right? And only two powers in the world genuinely have inherent cloud capital. One is America and the other is China. Actually, Europe doesn't have any cloud capital. What happens with the cloud system is the data circulates and is resident, and the applications downstream are where we are interacting as consumers. It then feeds back. The more you see, the more you know. The more you know, the more you see. So it's a mutually reinforcing perpetual loop. Structural monopolism is great for startups in the sense that because they see a threat emerging or a potential competitor, they say, तुम 100 साल में इतना नहीं कमाओगे, मैं आज तुमको check दे रहा हूँ. So they are happy to sell out. So if I'm not mistaken, WhatsApp was bought for $19 billion, right? There's a joke, by the way. Somebody said, तुमको पता है WhatsApp $19 billion में खरीद लिया. बोलता क्यों? Free में download होता है, खरीदने की क्या जरूरत थी? But so there's a positive element to that. The flip side is that anything that is threatening or disruptive will be bought and buried. There is a possibility that it will be bought and buried because it will never be given energy to surface up. NVIDIA is different. You see, the whole world of computing was run on central processing units. And then when neural networks began, they engaged with graphical processing units, and it was a widely diffused, parallelly processed system. And it took the risk to invest massively in GPUs. And फिर जैसे कहते हैं उनकी दुकान चल पड़ी. So this is why it has grown and become what it has become. If every other semiconductor manufacturer was tracked and bought over by them, then they would begin to appear to be a monopolist. That I don't think is. Now the second part, which is how can tech, etc., engage with the big ones. One is threat now can emerge by disruptive business models which come out of nowhere, right? Uber is a great example. It marries a map with ease of engagement and convenience for something that has been around for 100 years, hailing a taxi. So it's a new model which then completely pulls everybody in. Everybody is just waiting as a taxi driver to be pinged with Uber and vice versa. Now, what is the psychological shot that Uber took, since I'm on the subject? वो आपको बताता है आपकी कार 9 मिनट दूर है तो आप बड़े इत्मीनान से खड़े रहते हैं बिकॉज अभी 9 मिनट में आ जाएगी. But you would not wait 9 minutes in Bombay for a Kali Pili, I can tell you, because they were parked together on the curbside and you just went and sat in one. They had no right of refusal. You just opened the door and sat down and said. Today, that is not the case. So monopolies operate in several facets. It's not only about the structure of the business. Today, if it tells me dynamic pricing, things are busy, I will take 380 rupees for whatever. I can accept or I cannot accept. So the way in which new models can emerge can be hugely valuable for those who invent those disruptions. So that is one way. The other is large corporations have need gaps. They attend to their day-to-day business. They don't think as much in terms of what is next. But young entrepreneurs tend to pitch their offerings for the future because that is where the opportunity lies. And then that can be hugely rewarding as well. So these are the two ways in which it can happen. Anything else? Yes. I think it's on now.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that boxing example, sir, and learning by doing is the best way. Because I'm sure हम में से यहाँ बहुत लोग होंगे जो रॉकी बल्बोआ और $1 million बेबी देख के सोचते हैं हम भी बॉक्सर बन सकते हैं, बट वैसा होता नहीं है. So likewise, जैसे आपने बताया, we can use chat GPT and we should spend time on that platform. So as marketers, any other platforms that you recommend we must try out, especially those of us who have never used AI or like the first time adopters?
Look, there are, now there are literally dozens of them coming up every day. If you meet me separately, I will give you an entire list. There is also a lot of AI freeware, as in skill set freeware available for people to learn how. There is a way in which to work with AI, by the way. Most people get satisfied by asking, who is Shubhranshu Singh? Then it tells you something. Then you'll, I don't know about it. Isko kuch nahi aata. Because our vanity takes over, right? But there is a way in which to prompt it. You have to excite with inputs for it to give you the right output and guide it along, because it's learning. It is a self-acquired learning that the system has. And most of the interactive models now ask you, was that good enough? Do you want me differently? So you can work with the system, but full streams of work activity. For example, logo design. As a marketer, logo design was a very, like a sacred job. You went to a specialist brand shop that made only logos. Today, something like a Luca.com makes a logo like this, and it gives you everything. Purple mein chahiye, red mein chahiye, orange mein chahiye, bada chahiye, is font, everything. It happens like this. There are text to, say, stable diffusion, for example, another gate. There are text to video, video to text. You suck up a photograph and say, I want a sad story with this character. It will write you a story in the very next second. Is it great? No. The point is, the aircraft in 1910 was not a great aircraft. What you have today is billion times superior, right? But the principles of air travel are exactly the same. If you had a heart attack today, chances are your medical care is going to be vastly superior to what it was 30 years ago. But the principles of why you got a heart attack or what the cardiac surgeon will do is the same. It's like that. In AI interface tools, they are by the time I finish my next sentence, things would have improved. But the principle remains the same. So no matter where you start, you engage with the model to keep, and once you reach what it doesn't know, it will tell you, sorry, I don't know, I cannot do this task. So you begin to get a sense of how accommodating or how adaptive the system is. And you can go, I mean, I'll tell you separately as well, but you can go on and search actively. And another thing is you should trick them one between the other. You should go to Google and ask about Perplexity. You should go to Perplexity and ask about Google. That's what you should do. Okay, thank you very much.